Hey everyone, I am the TheChosenOneLegend here, as always joined by my co-host.
Hi, I'm Kye, also known as Fascurreyn.
And welcome back to the BunchaJokahs podcast, where we talk about various bits of gaming and Nintendo news from the past month. And Jesus guys, this is meant to be a quiet time of the year, but suddenly they're announcing and releasing so much stuff, shadow dropping a Xenoblade game. It's madness. Oh.
It's been a lot.
But it really has. There's been a lot to keep up with, but it's been great as well. At the same time, it's been a lot of fun. And, we're going to talk about some of that here. Honestly, not too much of the crazy stuff, because a lot of that we've either done it in its own video, or we're going to talk about on its own later down the line. And I should say straight away, along those lines, of course, Future Redeemed did release. I've been playing it, I'm about halfway through, and Kye has not started playing it yet, so
Correct.
We are not going to be talking about that in this video. Once we've both got time to, complete it and get a grip and get our thoughts together on it, then we'll do probably multiple videos on that one, so
Yeah.
Don't worry. Future Redeemed coverage is definitely coming, and suffice to say so far, I'm enjoying it. But yeah, that'll be down the line. For now, we've got a few other bits, particularly focusing on the Zelda trailer we never got around to, because Future Redeemed kind of stole its video slot.
Yeah, pretty much.
But we're going to talk about that here, as well as other bits of news. Of course, there will be timestamps in the description below if you want to check out the different sections of the podcast. But let's just get started straight away here with our first segment of the podcast, Can't Have a Podcast Without News Baby, where we talk about the various bits of news from the past month. And Kye, that Mario movie is doing pretty well, isn't it?
It is doing very well, in fact. I keep seeing updates almost daily on how successful it is.
Yeah, I mean, we all knew this was going to do well. It's Mario, a very big IP for like kids and adults. It's Illumination, who make a lot of popular films, some of the best-selling ones. But it's doing ridiculously well. It's crossed the billion mark worldwide, which is the first animated film to do that since Frozen 2, which was before COVID. It's, I think, somewhere along the lines of like the 7th best performing or highest grossing animated film, and it's still rising. It's still releasing in other countries daily at this point. I'm not sure I don't think it's going to reach the top. It would need another 500 million to beat Frozen 2, but it's doing ridiculously well, and it's great to see it.
Oh, it's set an amazing precedent. I mean, even the quality of the movie aside, just from these numbers alone, you can see that there's a lot of potential here. There's a lot of success. So I guess we've already had a lot of discussion on the ways they could open the doors for things, but it's very clear to see that they're on the right track, definitely.
Yeah, we did do our entire review discussion on the film, which is out if you want to check that out. So we won't go into our thoughts here, other than we loved it. But yeah, this is just a good sign. I mean, it was always going to do well enough to get sequels, but now that it's doing this well, Illumination and Nintendo have got to be raising it up in priority level straight away. Yes, we need to get on this second one. I think it even is a good sign for, we talked about this a bit in our review, but this is a good sign for other Nintendo projects being made. Maybe we get, even if not done by Illumination, I feel like they're going to be more confident now. Obviously, they were a bit nervous after the live-action Super Mario Bros. Movie. Understandably so. But hopefully this has sort of got them into, yes, we can make films and TV series and other projects that will do well. Because video game content, movies in general, are thriving. Stuff like Sonic and Detective Pikachu and The Last of Us TV show. It's all doing really well, and hopefully this streak continues.
Yeah, I would. It gives them the opportunity to branch out a bit more in other media, and even within gaming still. I think it would be a very odd decision if they didn't at least announce a new Mario-like game, like an Odyssey 2 or something soon, because they've got to ride off the success somehow, right? I would personally pitch that maybe they announce it in the summer, and then that's our winter game, is a new 3D Mario. But we'll see. That would,
we don't really know what Nintendo's big winter plans are yet, so that would definitely be a good shout. And who knows, maybe even could it launch a new console, a new version of a console? Because that would be a way to sell it at the moment, for sure, to families. So we'll definitely keep an eye on whatever comes out of this. But great to hear. And another thing that's great to hear, and is somewhat more surprising than this, is that Trine is getting another game. Trine 5, A Clockwork Conspiracy, which is coming out this summer. And we've only played the first 2 games together. The first one here on the channel, so go watch that playthrough if you want. It's chaos, but in the best possible way. And we did 2 on my friend BMODuck's stream. But it's a really fun series, and this looks to be taking after 4, which sort of went back to sort of the 2D roots, but kind of modernized it a bit, added a bit more flair and like colour to it. And from what we can see from the trailer, this looks generally like it's going to be another great entry. Definitely one I'm going to pick up. You looking forward to getting around to this one day, Kye? I know it's been a while since we played Trine, but I think you enjoyed it, right?
Yeah, I enjoyed. I mean, to be honest, I think my favourite part was just the trolling. Like, I had my gravity shield and my gravity arrows and stuff, and like the game itself is fine, but the troll potential is what really makes it for me. So I've been itching to play the 3rd one and the 4th one and all that. So we will probably get round to the 5th eventually, and I think it'll be a lot of fun, definitely.
Yeah, it's definitely like it's a fun game single player, but it really shines multiplayer. Especially you can get online and have other people causing chaos and occasional bits of teamwork when it happens, but that's kind of rare with us. But it's definitely a lot of fun. And we were even thinking of doing like Trine 3 soon on the channel, but then they shadow dropped Future Redeemed and Tears of the Kingdom's coming out, so you know
and
we don't
Samm
know when that will be.
Never has stable Wi-Fi.
This is true. Australian internet problems, am I right? But
yeah, once that gets sorted, we'll be full steam ahead.
Yeah, we'll definitely play on that one soon. And I've mentioned before, but Trine 3 is like a 3D one that's kind of a lot shorter, kind of almost a spin-off in some ways. So that would definitely be an interesting one to get to. But I'm glad to see the series is continuing to do well.
Yeah.
And speaking of things that are... Well, let's go the opposite of things. Things that are not really doing so well. Kye, you've got a little news story for us, haven't you? Why don't you fill us in?
So, funnily enough, I learned about this from Samm. He was telling me about it the other week. Where apparently they are adding eSports to the Olympics. Now, this on its own, I like to think, is like, oh, that's pretty cool. You know, I think that eSports is... I think it's an interesting genre where, of course, it's not as physically strenuous as most Olympic sports, but there's still like a level of dexterity required almost. You know, I kind of like how it's being respected in that sense. However, in reality, respect is the last word I would use for it, because what they have done to try and make eSport Olympics is disastrous. Now, they could have chosen like genuine esports. You know, some of the biggest esports, you're looking at things like League of Legends and Valorant and stuff. And even if you wanted ones that are less violent, you know, Rocket League is one of the most accessible esports out there for spectating, because, you know, even if a lot of the stuff's really technical, someone who's never played the game before still has a decent idea of what's going on, because it's just football cars. But what they've decided to do instead is choose their own roster of games, each one representing a real Olympic sport. So I've got a list pulled up. I'm not going to do all of them, of course, but some of them kind of make sense. Chess is now a thing, because chess.com, the online version of it, counts as an esport. And it's like, okay, chess at the Olympics. Chess is a sport. I vibe with that, sure. Okay, to represent racing, they have Gran Turismo. Okay, yeah, that was a pretty well-respected game. A little
Makes sense.
Strange, but because it's not really like an esport, but sure. Oh, what about this one? What about baseball? Power Pros, which looks like a game that was made for like the PS2. It's got like the Dokapon Kingdom UI.
Oh god.
That's kind of weird. Oh, what's this? Tic Tac Bow for archery? Oh, it's a mobile game. It's a mobile game. Okay, so yeah, all right. So a mobile game is now an Olympic sport. Oh, what are they doing for dance?
Oh no, here it comes.
Do you think they Just Dance? Oh yeah, it's Just Dance. Yeah, so Just Dance is now an Olympic sport. Thank you very much. Oh my god. So
Oh
just
no.
to clarify, yeah, Just Dance and mobile games are now Olympic sports.
I mean, I don't mean to brag, but I did pretty well at the Just Dance version of I Will Survive as a kid. That was one of my high scorers. So I think I'm in the running here for the Olympics. I think I have a chance.
God, I just think this is crazy though, like, because there's multiple mobile games. And, like, they're not even good mobile games. You know, they're the kind of ones that were released on the App Store in 2011.
Hmm.
Like, I think if they did this a
It's
decade ago, Flappy Bird would have been one. Like, I'm not
no.
even kidding.
Yeah.
Like, genuinely, because, this is. I mean, esports is something where I feel like it's fair to give it some representation at the Olympics. You know, it doesn't have to steal the show, but you know, it was like, oh, okay, that's cool that they're including that. To then make it like the worst selection of games possible, like it's a joke. It's an absolute joke.
It just becomes a thing when anytime that some like a big I don't know, community or big sort of organization outside of gaming tries to add something gaming. On the one hand, it's great to see, you know, try and get gaming more recognized in the ways it should be, but also it becomes very clear that the people organizing it don't have a clue what they're doing. And it always becomes things like where I can't remember something like the BAFTA do like best games, and it's just like 4 Call of Duty games or whatever. It's that kind of principle. It's like even things like, and this is slightly different, but I know Jeff Keighley is doing something like recognizing music and video games, and like there was like no Nintendo or Sega or Capcom or anything like that. It's all just stuff like music from Hogwarts Legacy, and
Yeah.
it's a lot of things that try to like say, hey, we're going to recognize this part of gaming just completely falls flat, and that continues this trend. It seems, but maybe it will improve over the years. Probably not.
No, I just think it's like disappointing because there's some esports that are like, there's games that I have no interest in whatsoever. But for esports, it's like they kind of make an interesting watch. You know, even for non-gamers, it's like, oh, that's, you know, it's an interesting idea. Even if it's just used as, you know, like a buffer between actual Olympic sports as like a bit of entertainment, I think it's great. But like, to make it the worst game selection possible, very clearly chosen by people who are like 80 years old and probably don't own a computer, like, they fumbled it so bad.
Well, at least, Kai, we know what we can do for our Olympic special video. We're going to do a Just Dance tournament here on BunchaJokahs.
God. Well, just anyone can like enter and apply for these things, so that'd be a fun video, wouldn't it? We tried.
There we go.
Participating in the Olympics for Just Dance.
Oh, could you imagine?
It's just a mockery.
We'll send Samm off. He can do it.
I like that plan.
Yeah, you don't have a choice in this, by the way, Samm, if you're watching this. But anyway, it's all decided now. Let's move on to our next topic here. Our final one, which is, of course, the big one. Tears of the Kingdom got its final trailer. And I mean, the game's coming out in a week. Under a week when this video releases, which is ridiculous. But you know, we won't go to full analysis mode as it's part of the main podcast, but let's break down some of the big bits from this trailer, some of the highlights. And I feel like the thing that caught fire on the internet, that everyone's talking about, for certain reasons, Ganondorf is back.
Yes, he's back.
People like him a lot. Too much in some ways, but...
Sounds thirsty. Like,
he's down bad.
He's very down bad. I mean, when he's...
I will include that screenshot in this video.
Yeah, that's... So that's Samm for you. But, yeah, Ganon's back. I like the design, though. I will say, I think the artwork they put on Twitter was really clean, so... I'm curious to see, like, how we'll see him in action in the game, you know, how we're going to fight against him and stuff.
He generally looks really cool, and I feel like it's weird to think about, but this is actually the first time seeing a new version of Ganondorf in a mainline Zelda game for like 15 years, since Twilight Princess. That was the last one. I mean, except for Hyrule Warriors, which of course is a spin-off, but we haven't had a new version of, you know, human Ganondorf since then. So it's going to be really cool to see him return, of course, now that he's voice acted by Matt Mercer as well, which is neat.
Yeah.
In general, I feel there's a lot of cool stuff they can do with him, and definitely looking forward to, like you say, how he's going to go up against Link. Like, what's the boss fight going to look like against him, the final fight? Because There are some
I'm
like the
curious
final.
on how much
Mhm.
story we'll get from him. I mean, we don't really know how
Yeah,
much story is going to be in the game, full stop, because of course Breath of the Wild was good, but didn't have for the amount of time you spend exploring, the amount of cutscenes wasn't proportional, I guess is the way to put it.
no, yeah.
Although maybe that's just our Xenoblade standards, I don't know. But it's going to be interesting in this one to see if they give more time to each character, and if so, how are they going to develop Ganon as a character? I don't think he's going to be too complex, but I wouldn't complain if he was.
That's true, yeah, because he's usually pretty simplistic. They give him some little bits of details, but I guess like what are he? Is he going to have some sort of motivations, or is it just going to be I'm angry, want to kill stuff? I mean, what
Yeah.
what separates him from Calamity Ganon? Why is he back in this state now? Is his plan just the same? There's a lot of questions, and like you say, it's Breath of the Wild. I think like they handled the story in a really good way to accentuate the gameplay and making it more about the exploration. But it is going to be interesting to see what balance they strike in the sequel, because you can't really tell too much from the trailers. Obviously, how much of
Yeah.
that is like our memories a thing? Is all the story cutscenes we see are all they're happening in the present? Are they just at the very beginning and end of the game? It's going to be interesting to find all that out, but it's definitely going to be fascinating. And not only do we see Ganondorf return, we also see some familiar champions return, or their descendants. We got, or whatever, I can't remember what the term for them was, but Sidon's here,
Yeah.
Riju's here, and they fight alongside you as well in combat, it looks like, which is awesome.
Companions, I like that.
Yeah. I feel like I wonder. I mean, it's. I'm pretty sure it's probably going to be limited to very specific sections. You're not going. I doubt you'll be able to have them around all the time. But just being able to actually see the champions fighting alongside you, it's especially coming off of Age of Calamity, where you got to
Mm.
play as them and whatnot, and see their combat capabilities. That's definitely a really neat addition, and I hope it is more prominent than just a small section in the game.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, there's quite a few different characters we see across the trailer, such as those. So I am assuming we'll see quite a bit more from them in various story missions. And
Hmm.
it's like you say, very reminiscent of Age of Calamity, where they fight alongside you. Though I'm guessing here it's going to be a little more tame by comparison.
Yes.
But yeah, yeah. I mean, just scrolling through it, like there's so many changes to the world and stuff, and obviously, like we've said, we're not going to be going over all of it. That's something that's sort of. I feel like it takes the fun out of it a little bit when this game is so much more based on exploration and stuff, but
Yeah.
um, just overall it looks really good. Like you see some of the bosses, like that three-headed dragon we saw in one of the other trailers.
Oh, that looks insane.
I
Yeah.
think in a recent thing that the name of that was revealed, and it's an old enemy type. I genuinely can't remember the name.
Yeah, it really looks
Um,
like. I mean, those bosses look huge. It generally looks like they're upping like the scale of things in a ridiculous
yeah.
way, which is saying something because Breath of the Wild is known for its scale. But
Mhm.
we're clearly not just getting Calamity Ganon versions. The different calamities and fighting them again. There's more variety here, and there's different kind of sections where like Link is like paragliding through like some lasers and like swimming up floating bubbles, and we see like a flying ship. There's like so many weird, like dynamic things that make you just think, wait, what's that? Wait, what's that? And that was always been, Breath of the Wild's strength. Is you see something in the distance, you want to learn more about it. And I'm glad to see from the trailer that it is continuing with those curiosities, those kind of details that just look bizarre but in the best way possible.
It just seems to be like an experimentation fest, and it's kind of like we said before, where the
Hmm.
first game was so much about exploration, looking around every corner, seeing all these different things, and just the fact that even now everyone's learning new facts about Breath of the Wild is insane.
Yeah.
Um, and then this game seems a little more like, it still has that element to it, obviously, especially for new players. But the number one thing now is creativity and what you can build,
Yeah.
as, seeing the new powers. And one of my favourite shots in this trailer is where Link is on top of his own, like, contraption of, like, a golem-looking thing. And he's, like,
Yeah.
storming towards a Talus Bokoblin camp, which on its own is an amazing enemy type. But you know what it reminded me of? It reminded me of Totally Accurate Battle Simulator, where you just get, like, a bunch of
Hmm.
different wacky random troops to face off against each other. And for some reason I
Yeah.
was getting that kind of vibe here, but God, so much potential, and I feel like we're only going to be scratching the surface as we go through it. I can't wait to like. I think we're going to do more content in the future once we've both beaten this game of just
Oh, for sure.
making
Yeah.
random things, doing I don't know, something. I feel like there's something there, but yeah, I'm really looking forward to this.
Yeah, it's just like people were waiting for that like that last big trailer, and this definitely sold it. This definitely, I mean, not, I mean, I was sold from the beginning. From the moment we
Yeah.
heard the words sequel to Breath of the Wild, I was like, yeah, pre-ordered. But I mean, this definitely showed. With this combined with like the gameplay section that Aonuma did a little while ago that we talked about, going into Link's new mechanics with, his arm and whatnot. Clearly, we are seeing now what is making this a sequel. We are seeing that there's potential interesting stuff for both gameplay and story. And I mean, to go off of that a bit more, we've got a lot of, we saw a bit more about what's happening with Zelda. That she seems to be somewhere, and Link's got to find her again. There's all these sort of like, we see some like mysterious figures as well, kind of like one
Oh no, it's
one
Freezer
woman
Crown.
who it is Freezer Crown. The first thought in my mind was the moment I said that, I was like, oh no, it's coming back. But we see like this woman who seems to like have a similar tear thing, shaped thing as Zelda has. Maybe that's the Tears of the Kingdom.
Ooh.
Yeah, it's all coming together now. We see like I couldn't figure out this like dark figure who's sort of I couldn't figure out their species. Are they like Zonai maybe? I think they're the one with Zelda.
I think
But
it's a Zono tribe person. They're going to be the
yeah,
Sheikah of this game. Which is a little funny because it was like, oh, the ancient Sheikah, and now it's just the ancient Zonai. Like, it's the same as the Sheikah, but they're green. It's like, obviously,
yeah,
there's a lot more differences, but boiled down to it's basically that. But I'm still here for it. I think the Zonai are cool.
yeah. It definitely sets up like they don't reveal too much there, but it definitely sets up a bit of an interesting premise and into what extent they're going to feature into the story because it's clearly more than just Ganondorf has revived. Why is Zelda with them? Is that to do with Ganondorf? It's like again, we could sit here speculating for ages, but I like that it's raising these questions, and we're going to get to see that fold out very shortly. Which I'm
Yeah.
not ready for it, Kai. I'm still playing Xenoblade and Star
No,
Wars.
I'm still trying to beat Octopath. It's tough. It's tough.
Yeah.
I
Oh,
don't know how long it'll take us before we do an actual discussion on this game because we'll both spend so long playing it. Like, I'd wager I need
yeah.
like 3 months or something.
Yeah, same here. The first game took me 6 months to beat, and I played a little bit less back then. But even still, we're clearly in for a lot of stuff here.
Yeah.
I mean, we see a few little bits more. Like we see like some towns returning, which is our first look at those back. It's just looking really fun, and I don't. Are there any other little bits you wanted to mention, Kai, from the trailer before we end this section off?
One thing I do want to mention, which I find really funny, is I
Mm-hmm.
haven't looked into it in detail, but people on Twitter have doxed Zelda.
Yes.
They have figured out, based on like very, very vague parts of the trailer, where Zelda is located on the map in various cutscenes and things like that. I don't know if it's safe to say. Maybe I should leave that, but
Yeah, probably leave it just in case.
yeah,
But
it's funny.
yeah, people are dedicated. That's for sure.
Yeah, so we've got that. We've got a couple new characters that we see as well as the returning ones. I think one of them is speculated to be Hylia. I don't know Zelda lore, so
Yeah.
like I'm there's plenty I'm sure that I'm missing, but just overall like there seems to be so much new here, and I'm struggling to like pinpoint certain bits because all of it is like super interesting.
It's literally it's the Breath of the Wild effect. You're like, there's so much here. Like, what do I do? Where do I even start? That is the effect that
Yeah.
having playing Breath of the Wild has, and even just talking about it, it's clear that's the same for Tears of the Kingdom.
Yeah, just so many new mechanics and everything. It
Mm.
looks like dungeons possibly returning.
Yeah,
In some capacity. I don't know if that'll be real, like traditional dungeons, or if it's just like underground areas. There's new enemies, of course. Like there's this huge one that kind of looks like a Molduga, but is Malice, and on land. And we've got like that massive one that like comes out when you're with Tava's
son. Yeah,
son.
Mm.
There's a couple really cool bits like that there.
I feel like,
I
of
think
course,
that's
we
basically it.
the most important thing has got to be Buckethead, the random civilian just wearing a bucket in that scene with
Oh
Link and a group of
yeah,
them.
that's it. It kind of suggests that like you get to recruit like a platoon of characters to fight with you. Again, we don't know the specifics of how that'll work, but I'm super
Yeah, it
down
looks
if you
like.
can just gather a team and start attacking a Bokoblin base.
Yeah, it also looks like there's an escort mission where he's like got a car, a custom built car of people, and he's fighting monsters, protecting them. So there's clearly a lot of stuff to this game, and I cannot wait to start to unpack it over the rest of this year, probably at this point. So
Yes.
it's going to be wild. But that's probably all we have to say about the final Tears of the Kingdom trailer. Definitely excited to get our hands on it, and again, once we finished it, whenever that may be, we will of course be making videos on that, probably several of them. So let's
Yeah.
all look forward to that. But that does bring us to the end of the news for this month, the highlights we sort of chose. So let's go on to the final section of the podcast, Games Time, baby, which is where we talk about what games we've been playing and scrambling to beat before all hell breaks loose this past month. And for me, the first one, because I sort of had a bit of a lucky gap here before the chaos that was the end of April. I started it by going through my backlog and playing Professor Layton and the Miracle Mask, which I've sort of been playing through the Layton games over the past few years. I've mentioned them here. But they were all the DS ones were all replays. I played them as a kid. But this is my first time playing Miracle Mask, and in general my first time seeing Layton on the 3DS, which was an interesting change. And generally, I mean, it's pretty much what you expect, really. It's the same sort of system. It's puzzles. It's chaos in the story. Lots of quirky characters. It's the same sort of gameplay loop where you start off getting really into the puzzles, and then by the end of it, you want to see the story, so you just spam hint coins. That's what it's like for me, anyway. But sometimes you feel like a genius. Sometimes you feel like a complete moron when you miss something basic. It's the same Layton affair, and it's just as good here. It's a lot of fun. And in terms of like what has changed on the 3DS, the main thing is that like the action's now on the top screen, which did put me off at first because you're no longer directly tapping on the environment. You're like moving a cursor around.
Yeah.
But you get used to it pretty quickly. It's pretty simple, and it generally like it makes use of it because these environments are really nice looking, especially in 3D. Like, I feel like even if they did bring these to like the Switch or something, you are going to be missing something in the way that these environments like pop on the top screen. So it was clearly worth the transition, I think. But maybe the bit that doesn't hold up so well in that regard is the 3D models, which just kind of look a bit soulless, I think is the thing.
They are jarring. They are really, really jarring. Of course, like I've said many times before, Inazuma 11 was developed around the same time, so it also made the jump to 3D, and both of them happened at the same time, and I was like, oh my god, like this is weird, I don't like it. You get used to it, but it's still not as good.
I think so, yeah. Like, it lacks a bit of personality from the 2D sprites and artwork, and it's not like they can't translate stuff like that, because clearly, you know, the Ace Attorney series has done it remarkably well with how much life the 3D models of characters have. So clearly it can be done. Hopefully, you know, that's something maybe when the new Layton game comes out, which lines up perfectly with my replay of the series, by the way, completely by coincidence. But whenever that does come out, hopefully the models in that have improved for that version, have a bit of life in them. But otherwise, it was just a really good time in general. But I do think, in terms of the story, I kind of consider this one of the weaker entries, to be honest with you.
It's one of my favourites. I think it has a lot of weak points, so I agree.
Well, Kye, here's my PowerPoint presentation on why you're incorrect. So, number one. But I think I just found that, like, it feels like part of a trilogy, really. It really just, this entire game kind of felt like it was just set up for the next game rather than standing on its own legs. And I feel like in general, this trilogy, at least in my opinion, is kind of suffering for that. Like, in trying to be like, rather than having each game like the first trilogy, its own contained adventure, and you have your wacky plot twist at the end that resolves itself. I just kind of like, I don't know, I never really felt interested in hearing about Layton's past. I didn't really care much for that kind of stuff. Like, it didn't bother me, but I wasn't particularly interested. and it kind of like ends on a really flat note where nothing kind of resolves for this story except the big plot twist, which was really obvious.
Yeah.
And whilst I do like, I like the characters and the environment, I feel like the setting of the town with like all in like this festival vibe is really nice in that. It just kind of got a bit too broad strokes for me that I kind of lost interest. So I kind of hope that, and it does seem like World of Steam is going to be more its own contained thing, and I kind of hope that's the case. I didn't think it was awful or anything, I just kind of prefer it standalone to Trilogy, and I feel like my opinion would probably be the same going into Asran Legacy from what I've heard of that game.
Mm-hmm.
But although speaking of that, I don't even know if I'm going to be able to play that game because it's like ridiculous expensive now. So maybe I'll just watch a Let's Play at this point.
Yeah, that's the thing. Asran Legacy, largely like anything that's good in Asran Legacy hinges on knowing the rest of the series, and then the things that don't rely on that aren't very good. And I don't know.
Yeah.
I think the thing about Miracle Mask is I like most of the story. You know, the plot with all of that cast of characters from Layton's youth is like... It feels like Layton shouldn't have been friends with all of them a lot of the time. It feels kind of like he's an onlooker into this mystery, and I don't know if that... I'm not like a literature expert, so I don't know if that change should have been made, but... I kind of like it to an extent, but it feels like it does fall flat in some areas. I do like exploring the Akbadine ruins for the first half an hour. Then you explore it for the other 5 hours, and it gets a little old. But I like the vibe of the puzzle dungeon. One bit of the game I really like is I actually really, really enjoyed the micro mysteries of figuring out what the Masked Gentleman had done, especially when you have to do the multiple choice questions on it.
That was a neat addition, yes. I did like those.
Yeah, I liked that, because sometimes you have games like, for example, what's like a good example of one? I guess Spectre's cool, Last Spectre, where you've kind of, like all the other games, you've just got one overarching story, and then anything that they try and do in between just doesn't, it never really hit me. It never connected with me in those games, like the crows or whatever it was in that game. I never cared much for the smaller mysteries, but in this game, with each of the Masked Gentleman's tricks, I was on board the whole way through. But yeah, when you get to the very end, and then it's like, Descale, and I've got this thing from the movie you haven't watched. And it's like, okay, I'm kind of not feeling that part, actually. I'm not really on board anymore. Like, I was for a little while, but yeah, I think it could have worked on stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like it had some really interesting ideas, a lot more so than Spectre's Call. I think it had a lot better premise, but it did sort of... I feel like at least Spectre's Call kind of wrapped up its own story. It had like a big confrontation with Descale, which was neat. This kind of fell at the end, but I still enjoyed it. Like, I'm being quite critical here, but overall, it's Layton, it's ridiculous, and it's fun. So you know what you're getting into. Yeah. And the moment he starts figuring things out and the Layton theme kicks in, it feels great, so it was a good time.
Good puzzles, yeah.
Yeah, and good puzzles too. But Kye, what have you been playing this past month?
Well, the main thing I've been playing this past month is I've put about 70 hours or so into Octopath 2. But we kind of said this beforehand. I'm not going to go into that yet, and I'll talk about that next month. Just because I've almost beaten the game. I've got to do a couple characters' final chapters and then the penultimate stuff. But until I've done that and unlocked that story and some more bits of that gameplay, I don't want to go into it. So, just for the record, I have been playing it, but I'm not going to talk about it. What I also have been playing on stream, which I can get out of the way now, is Inazuma 11 2, because I'm playing through the trilogy, obviously. So, yeah, it continues on from the first game in a lot of its wacky ways, of all your special moves and your characters and whatever. Except, if you thought the first game was unhinged with its, numerous assassination attempts on children and all that serious stuff, this game just amplifies it. You've seen, that's all it does, is it gives you so much more of that. And I love it. I think it's so charming that it's just unhinged.
It's so, as our friend Sophie would say, is this really meant a kids football game?
Yeah.
Is it? No, but it's funny for it, and I love it.
Yeah, it just doesn't take. I mean, it's weird. It sort of takes itself seriously, but also is very clearly not serious. But it doesn't
Yeah,
do it in a way
it's
that feels like
self-aware.
a fail. It's just, yeah, it's kind of self-aware. But at the same time, it does have some interesting plot points. I think a lot of the story falls short because it is confined to a game. Like, there's already way too much dialogue in the game, and it feels like
Yeah.
it's missing stuff. But of course, the anime does that for you.
Mm.
The gameplay is good. It's just, it's basically the same as the last game with some new added features like the long shots, which just make it broken. Let's be honest. And then the whole running joke of the two new features of like character types are aliens and women, which
Yeah.
the amount of jokes you can make from that. So.
And
Just,
many have been
yeah.
on your streams. But let us not forget the most important addition, which is
Yeah.
a sentient playable deer. The legend deer itself. The best football player in the world.
Yes, a deer is on the team, and he's the best character. He's actually the best character.
He
I
is.
won't lie. I've trained him up to be
Yeah.
that anyway. So yeah, I
Oh.
enjoy it though. I think it's a really fun game, and again, it's not like obviously it's not perfect, and it does have its fair share of issues with like story being a bit odd and whatnot, but. Ultimately, it still has a really unique style of gameplay, and it's very charming. So, I'm enjoying showing it off and everything.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun to watch. It's like you say, it's chaos. It's like completely ridiculous, but it's a lot of fun in the process. So yeah, I've definitely been enjoying watching it. And I mean, three's the next one, right? So bring on three. I've heard it dials things down a little bit, but I'm sure it's still going to be crazy
Yes.
in its own regards.
3 is a little more tame, so yeah, that's good.
As long as Deer's there, Kai, that's what that matters.
We can't confirm that. Gabe and I had looked, and we don't know.
The hunt for Deer it is. Not in the bad way, in the good hunt
Maybe
for Deer
it's because
way.
he's broken, so they had to nerf him. That's fine.
Understandable. He better be in the new one, is all I'm saying. That will just be the decider on if I buy it or not. So
Honestly, that's a really good point of speculation because I don't know. I think he will be, but we'll see.
Only one way to find out. Wait patiently, wait for Deer.
Mhm.
But I guess for now I'll go on to my second game I've been playing this month, which is one that I finally, after they shadow dropped it in February when I was way too busy, I finally got a way to fill it in when I got it for my birthday, and that's Metroid Prime Remastered on the Switch. Seriously, Nintendo, stop shadow dropping stuff. What is it with you recently? But it's, I mean, Kai, you watched Star Friend Draconian Valley play this, didn't you?
Yes,
So
I did.
as you can attest to, this is a ridiculously insane looking game. Like, holy,
Yeah.
holy shit. Like, a lot of the times with these remasters, like the Skyward Sword HD, you play it and you kind of feel like, this is what I remember it looked like. And it's only when you go back and compare it, you're like, oh, I can see how they've improved it. This, however, was not the case, because you take one look at this and it's like, yeah, this did not look this good on the Wii. No way. It is, the level of detail is insane, because otherwise it's basically the same game. It's Metroid Prime, it's great. They haven't really made any changes to the gameplay. It just looks insanely good. And if this is even like if Prime 4 looks even a fraction of this level, like, we're in for something special, but the fact that it's gonna be, ground up is probably gonna look even better. I cannot wait, because it just looks insane. Like, the level, it might not be like the most best looking game in terms of, like the scale of Breath of the Wild and Xenoblade and whatnot, but in terms of pure polish, I don't think anything on the Switch rivals this, to be honest with you. It's ridiculous.
No, yeah. I mean, it just looks really good. Simple as that. Like, the
Yeah.
detail is there, and that's really all you want from a remaster. That's exactly what it's there for. So.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, they did it's nice that they've got the different control options, like from the GameCube and the Wii's motion controls as well. I went with motion controls, which I had some problems with, but that's due to my setup completely. It's not the game's fault, so it's still my preferred way to play it. I do kind of wish they had a bit more of a combo system, like you know, like how Splatoon works, where you make big movements with the analog stick, but can make adjustments and finer details by gyroscope controls.
Yeah.
I kind of wish they had a control option like that, because with the motion controls, like if you want to rotate around 180 degrees, you have to just move your Wii remote till Samus spins around 180 degrees. So I do think they could have added a new option there, but you know, there's still plenty there, and there's loads of accessibility options in general. So it's definitely refined, and the game it still plays great. I mean, the way that they've transitioned 2D Metroid into 3D, like all the different items work really interestingly. The environments look insanely good, and the music and little details like the rain coming off of Samus's visor. It's one of the most atmospheric games you will ever play, and it's still a lot of fun to explore now. But I do think, however, that I did notice this time around some parts that hadn't aged quite as well as I thought they had. Particularly, one is the enemies later on, where they just become really obnoxious to beat, I'm not gonna lie. Like, they just become... They throw loads of damage sponges at you, basically, where you have to keep switching weapon types to like take them down. And they keep respawning in rooms when you're trying to explore old areas at like ridiculous rates, where you'll leave a room, go back to it, and 3 enemies will have already respawned. Like, it kind of gets... Exploring late game kind of gets obnoxious with it. So that's one thing that they could have turned down. And the other thing is the map system, where really I've just been spoiled from like Metroid Dread and Samus Returns, the Mercury Steam games, because Prime doesn't really mark anything on the map. So if you like find a power-up that you can't get to yet, you just have to remember it's there. Like, it does not mark that you found it at all. Which basically means like there was not a chance in hell I'm going to 100% this game without a guide. Whereas Dread, I loved 100%ing it. Like, it was a really fun part of the game, and I would have thought the same for Prime, but because it doesn't mark stuff, it's just like, I'm not going to go back to every single area checking it. That's just not going to happen.
Yeah, of course. That makes sense.
And also as part of that, like, it doesn't also mark things like obstacles. Like in Dread, when you find a type of rock that can only be beaten by power bombs, it's marked on your map. So that way, when you get power bombs later, you're like, oh, I can go back here. It doesn't do that. So not only do you not know where to check a lot of the time, and the game doesn't kind of naturally lead you in the right direction like Dread does, it also means that sometimes you'll see like, oh, there's a red door here. That's the main thing it does show. I can go through this door now, I have a new power-up. You make your way all the way there, and then you forget that there's a type of rule in the way that you can't bomb that wasn't marked on your map, so you have to make the trip back.
Okay, I see.
Yeah. The game wastes your time in a lot of ways. Like, the exploration's good, but it would have been such an easy fix, really, just to mark those on the map to make it so much more... So it doesn't waste your time, really. And whilst I can't criticise them too much for doing that, not doing that here, because clearly they weren't changing the gameplay. It was just a really big facial uplift. So I can't criticise Remastered too much for it, but it sort of showed me that's something they need to do when it comes to Prime 4. Like, they need to learn the lessons that Dread and, Samus Returns did, and implement those into 3D Metroid. Because I can overlook it here, but it's a 20-year-old game or whatever. I can't overlook it in the brand new entry on the Switch. So hopefully they learn from this. But all in all, like, that aside, it's still a really fun game. And it's like 30 quid, which is... They could have charged full price for this easily and people would have paid. So definitely one to pick up if you haven't. Or even if you did like the original, get Prime Remastered, it's good.
Get it. I'm not going to, but like, get it. I mean, it looks pretty interesting. So.
Someone else play it. Yeah.
Yeah.
But do you have anything else you want to mention, Kye? Any other games?
I think that's about it from me this time around.
Mm-hmm. Fair enough. That's it then. That pretty much brings us to the end of the main podcast. And now we can go back to our regularly scheduled trying to fit all the chaos in, and me trying to finish Xenoblade and Kye trying to start Xenoblade, and we'll get there. But safe to say, there is a lot of stuff upcoming for us from BunchaJokahs, talking about Future Redeemed and Tears of the Kingdom. I've been playing Star Wars Jedi Survivor, Kye's been playing Octopath. There's still going to be announcing new stuff. We're getting into like E3 season, even if E3 itself is dead. There's probably still going to be big announcements. So, there's a lot going to be happening here. And of course, you can find that all on BunchaJokahs, be that on Spotify and other podcasting sites for the audio-only versions, or on YouTube for video versions. all under the name BunchaJokahs. But Kye, where else is it that people can find you at?
They can find me at twitch.tv/Fascurreyn, where I'm doing my thing. Like I say, currently playing through Inazuma 11 2. I've not actually finished it yet, but I'm close. And once I've done that, Future Redeemed will be my next playthrough. So if you want to see my reaction, then give it like a couple weeks and I'll be on it.
Yeah, definitely looking forward to that one. There's a lot of stuff I'm thinking, I can't wait for Kye to see this, so I'll definitely be there. Of course, there'll be a link in the description below to Kye's Twitch, and also to our friend's Twitter, Samm, who of course is the guy, our graphic designer, who makes our thumbnails, made our logo, and of course is going to be entering the Just Dance Olympics. He doesn't have a choice in it, so add that to his resume. So thank you, Samm, and apologies. And thank you to you guys for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.
Bye.